When I opened the door to my vacation home after a year away, I expected dust, silence, the same old wooden walls, but instead every wall was covered in new wallpaper, fresh, patterned, perfectly installed. Wallpaper I never chose, wallpaper I never paid for, wallpaper I never approved. I dropped my keys because the moment I checked the security footage, I saw someone living in my house, sleeping in my bed, using my shower, and walking through the rooms like they owned them. But that wasn't the worst part. The true horror was what they did when they realized I was coming back. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Your support helps bring these stories to life. My name is Lawrence Bishop. I'm 63 years old, and for the past decade, my small cabin in Henderson, Montana has been the only place that ever felt like mine. I bought it after my wife passed. A quiet getaway, a piece of peace. But after what I discovered this year, I don't think I'll ever set foot in that cabin again, because some people don't just break into homes, they move in. And this intruder left me a message I still can't forget. The cabin looked exactly the same from the outside, same slope of the roof, same chipped paint on the railing, same old rocking chair I'd left 2 summers ago. But the moment I stepped inside, something felt wrong. Not someone broke a window wrong. Not things are missing wrong, something deeper, subtle, wrong in a way that crawled under your skin. The air smelled different, not old wood and dust. It smelled lived in, warm, breathy, like someone had been there only hours earlier. I walked into the living room, and that's when I froze. The wallpaper. The walls had always been bare wood, dark, weathered, warm, but now they were covered floor to ceiling in pale blue wallpaper with tiny white flowers. Freshly glued, perfectly aligned, not a bubble, not a tear, as if a professional had done it. Only one problem: I never ordered wallpaper. I never asked for renovations. I hadn't even given out a spare key. My heartbeat stumbled. I went from room to room, hoping I was misremembering. The hallway, new wallpaper. The bedroom, new wallpaper. The kitchen, new wallpaper. Even the bathroom had been stripped bare and repapered in a matching pattern. I stepped into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, my bed. The sheets smelled of detergent, not the brand I used, fresher, newer. Someone had washed them. Someone had slept in them. My chest tightened. I forced myself to breathe. There had to be a reasonable explanation. Maybe the property manager made a mistake. Maybe a contractor was misassigned. Then I opened the fridge. It wasn't empty. It was full. Fresh eggs, milk, vegetables, takeout containers labeled with dates, recent dates. My mouth went dry. Someone had been living here, not visiting, not squatting for a night or two. Living. I stumbled backward, my spine hitting the table. I fumbled for my phone to call the sheriff. Then remembered I'd had security cameras installed 2 years earlier, after a bear broke into the cabin and tore apart my pantry. If someone had been inside, the footage would show it. I hurried to the living room, switched on the Wi-Fi router, and opened the camera app. My thumb trembled as I typed my password. The feed loaded, and the first thing I saw made my blood turn to ice. The living room camera showed a woman, not from today, not from this moment, from months ago. She sat on my couch wearing a long beige sweater and holding a mug. She looked comfortable, relaxed, like she belonged there. She wasn't panicked. Wasn't sneaking around. She was making herself at home. She put her feet up on my coffee table, the table I'd sanded myself, the table where my wife and I once played cards on rainy nights. Then she laughed at something on the TV, a warm laugh, a familiar laugh. My stomach twisted. I didn't recognize her face, but something about her posture, the softness in her shoulders, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, felt unsettlingly intimate. I clicked over to another camera. The bedroom. There she was again, changing the sheets, folding laundry, opening drawers, my drawers. She wasn't stealing. She wasn't vandalizing. She was organizing, like she lived there. Like she'd lived there for a while. I clicked to the kitchen feed. She was cooking, stirring something in a pot, humming to herself. The hallway feed, she was carrying wallpaper rolls and a toolbox. When she reached for a skim coat blade, I saw something on her wrist. A bracelet, dark brown leather, worn thin at the edges. A bracelet I'd bought 35 years ago for my wife. My heart nearly stopped. It couldn't be the same one. Thousands of bracelets must look identical. But then the camera angle shifted as she bent down to open a drawer. My breath caught. A small metal tag hung from the bracelet. Engraved with 2 letters, LB, my initials. My hands shook violently. She had my wife's bracelet, the one I thought I'd buried with her, the one I swore I'd never seen since the funeral. I opened the next clip, and the next, weeks of footage, her living there, sleeping in my bed, walking through my home at night, reading books I left behind, touching photographs, crying sometimes, smiling other times, and each time she was on camera, she wore that bracelet. I clicked the audio icon on one of the clips, static for a moment, and then her voice, soft, warm, shaky, like someone talking to themselves to stay sane. She whispered, "I knew he'd come back someday." My entire body went cold. She wasn't a squatter. She wasn't a thief. She was waiting for me. I scrolled to the most recent clip, the one recorded just hours before I arrived. It showed the bedroom, nighttime, pitch dark, then movement. The woman walked into the room holding a phone to her ear. I turned up the volume and heard her whisper, "He's coming back. I saw the reservation. It's time." Time for what? She walked to the bed, placed something under the pillow, leaned down, and in a voice so gentle it made my skin crawl, she whispered, "Welcome home, Lawrence." I slammed the laptop shut. My heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I wasn't alone. I hadn't been alone for a long time. And as I stood frozen in the middle of the room, I noticed something I hadn't seen before in the corner. Behind the door, half hidden under a blanket, a suitcase. Not mine, not old, not dusty, freshly packed, freshly placed. Like someone had left only minutes before I walked in. My breathing turned shallow. She wasn't gone. She wasn't done. She was coming back. I stood in the center of the bedroom, staring at the suitcase like it was a wild animal that might lunge at me if I moved. My breath felt thin, paper thin, barely enough to keep me upright. Someone had been here moments before I arrived, not days, not hours, minutes. I swallowed hard and approached the suitcase slowly like I was defusing a bomb. The zipper was halfway open. Inside, I saw neatly folded clothes, mostly sweaters, leggings, and jeans. All women's clothing, all clean. On top of them was a notebook, black leather, weathered edges. The kind of notebook someone carried everywhere. My hand shook as I picked it up. On the first page, written in small, delicate handwriting, June 12, day 318. My pulse stuttered. Day 318, she'd been living here for almost a year. I turned the page. Day 319, I cleaned the kitchen. He always liked it spotless. My throat tightened. She was talking about me. Another page, day 324, hung the new wallpaper today. It feels more like a home this way. The old walls made me sad. I skimmed faster, desperation clawing at my chest. Day 341, sometimes I talk to him. I know he's not here, but I pretend. Day 350, I wore the bracelet today. He gave it to her, but if I wear it, maybe he'll see me instead. My breath caught. This wasn't just obsession. This was identity theft of grief. She had built a fantasy out of my memories. I flipped to the most recent entry. Day 364, he made a reservation. He's coming home. I need to prepare everything. At the bottom, I hope he understands. I hope he remembers me. Remember her. I didn't know her at all. I dropped the notebook on the bed like it burned my hands. My mind was racing now, too fast, too loud. I forced myself to think, call the sheriff, call anyone. But a small, sick fear kept whispering, what if she hasn't left the property? I walked to the front window and peeked through the curtains. The mountain road empty, the pine trees still. No car, no figure, no movement, just silence. But silence was never this heavy unless someone was listening to it too. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed the sheriff's office in Henderson. A woman answered. Henderson County Sheriff's Department. "Hi," I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Someone's been living in my vacation cabin. They changed things, left personal items. I think they're still close. She asked my name. I told her. There was rustling on her end, typing. Then she said something strange. "Mr. Bishop, is this about the wellness checks we performed last year?" I frowned. "Wellness checks? For who?" "For you." A chill slid down my spine. "For me? Why would someone request those?" "Well," she said slowly, "your daughter called multiple times." "My daughter?" I nearly laughed. "I don't have a daughter." Silence. Then the woman whispered, "Sir, she insisted she was." My head spun. "She said you were grieving alone in the cabin," the dispatcher continued. "She said you weren't answering her calls. She begged us to check on you. A fake daughter, a fabricated identity. She had been building a life around me even outside the cabin. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "Can you send a deputy?" I asked. "We can," she said, "but the roads are slow tonight. About an hour minimum. An hour, too long." I hung up and paced the living room, trying to gather my thoughts. That's when I saw it, the window above the sink. Something was different. The curtain was pushed slightly aside, just an inch, just enough for someone outside to peek in. My stomach dropped. I walked toward it slowly. Every step felt like stepping deeper into water. I reached the window, took a breath, and with my fingertips slid the curtain fully open. Nothing, just the dark stretch of trees, shadows layered over shadows. But then a flicker, small, white, near the tree line. I squinted, a piece of fabric, a scrap of wallpaper, the same pattern she hung inside the house. My chest tightened. She had been outside, watching me through the window, watching me read her notebook, watching me discover everything. My pulse hammered in my ears. I grabbed a flashlight from the drawer, threw on my coat, and stepped outside into the cold. The forest was too quiet. Even the birds weren't singing. I clicked on the flashlight and followed the small trail of wallpaper scraps that led into the trees. One piece. 5 feet later, another. 10 feet, another. Then I reached a clearing and stopped. There, sitting in a perfect circle, were items from my cabin, a mug from the kitchen, a blanket from the couch, a book from my nightstand. My wife's old picture frame, the one that used to sit by the bed. Someone had arranged them like an altar. And beside them in the dirt, words carved with a stone, "I'm still here." I felt my skin go cold. A twig snapped behind me. I spun, flashlight shaking, nothing, just darkness. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down, a text from an unknown number. Just one line, "Don't be afraid, Lawrence. I've been waiting for this moment." My heart lurched painfully. I raised my flashlight again and saw a shadow move between 2 pines. Tall, thin, deliberate, she was here. She had been watching me the entire time. I backed away, hands trembling, feet slipping on pine needles. My voice barely escaped my throat. "Who are you?" A soft whisper drifted through the trees, not loud, not rushed, just close enough to freeze my blood. "Don't you remember what you promised her?" I froze. "Promised who?" "My wife." Before I could speak, a figure stepped forward, half lit by my flashlight. A woman, tangled hair, pale face, eyes too calm for the situation. She wore the bracelet, my wife's bracelet, and she smiled gently, like greeting an old friend. "Hello, Lawrence. It's time we finish what she started." She stepped into the beam of my flashlight with the kind of calm that didn't belong in a moment like this. A stranger, yet not a stranger. The bracelet glinted around her wrist, my wife's bracelet, the one I thought I had buried, the one I hadn't seen in over a decade. Her smile was soft, too soft. "Don't be scared, Lawrence," she whispered. "I always knew you'd come home eventually." My throat tightened. "Who are you?" I managed to say. "And why do you have that bracelet?" She tilted her head gently, as if confused by the question. "You gave it to her," she said. "She treasured it. She told me you chose it because the tag reminded you of your initials." She lifted her wrist, the metal charm catching the moonlight. "LB," she smiled again. And she was right, it was perfect. My heart hammered against my ribs. This woman spoke like she had known my wife, like she had sat with her, listened to her, loved her. But that was impossible. My wife had been gone for 10 years. I stepped back. "How do you know anything about my wife?" I demanded. She blinked as if I had wounded her. "Because she told me," she whispered. "She talked to me for months." My stomach twisted. "Talked to you?" I shook my head. "That's impossible. My wife never mentioned you. She didn't know you." The woman's expression faltered for the first time, like a child realizing their favorite story has plot holes. "No," she said softly. "She didn't, not at first." The forest felt too quiet. The cold seeped deeper into my skin. "What do you mean, not at first?" She took a slow step closer. "Lawrence," she said, voice gentle, almost maternal. "I was with her at the hospital." My breath caught. The hospital, the final weeks, the quiet rooms, the machines. The prayers whispered into fading skin. I felt the familiar ache rising in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. She placed a hand against her heart. "I was a volunteer there, in the long-term care wing. I visited the patients who didn't have many visitors left." Her voice softened. "She didn't like being alone. She cried a lot at first, mostly at night." A sting spread behind my eyes. I hadn't known that. I hadn't been there for every moment. I had worked extra shifts trying to pay for treatments insurance refused to cover. She talked about you, the woman said, endlessly, your marriage, your memories, the cabin, this cabin. She swept her eyes over the clearing. She told me you were the love of her life, that she didn't want you to be alone when she was gone. My throat closed. And she, the woman, hesitated, almost shy. She asked me to look after you. A tremor ran through my hands. No, I whispered. She would never ask that, never. The woman's eyes filled with something between pity and obsession. She didn't ask directly, she said. She was too kind for that. A beat. But she said something that I knew she meant as a message. Cold crept up my spine. What message? The woman took one more step toward me. She said, he won't do well alone. Someone will need to stay close after I'm gone. The trees seemed to lean in. She continued, I knew she meant me, Lawrence. I knew she trusted me. She looked at me like, her voice broke, like I was the one who could keep you from falling apart. I stared at her, horrified. You misunderstood her, I said. She didn't know you. She didn't choose you. Her face flickered with hurt. You think I don't know that, she whispered. You think I don't know I wasn't her first choice, but she saw me. She talked to me. She knew my loneliness. I knew hers. A tear slipped down her cheek. We needed each other. Her voice dropped, and when she died, I came here. My breath stopped. You what? I didn't want her memories to vanish. She gestured around the clearing. So I came to the place she loved, the place she told me about, your place. My heart pounded painfully. You broke in. You lived in my home. I stayed, she corrected gently. Stayed for you, for her. Her expression shifted, calm fading into something more fragile, more fractured. She wanted me to be here when you were ready. My voice shook. She didn't ask for that. She never would. The woman's smile collapsed. Her voice trembled. You think I don't know what I meant to her? I was there when you were. She pointed a trembling finger at me. I heard her last words. My head spun. What last words? She stepped closer, so close her breath brushed my ear. She said, promise me someone will stay with him. Her eyes burned with devotion. So I promised. My chest tightened until it hurt. You promised her. No, she smiled faintly. I promised myself. The wind rustled the trees like a warning. I took another step back. I'm calling the police. Her face hardened suddenly like a mask cracking. No, she whispered. You can't. Not after everything I've done for you. Everything you've done. And then she said the sentence that froze me down to the marrow. Lawrence, you're not going anywhere. Not tonight. Not ever. This is our home now. My flashlight flickered. Her eyes glowed with a devotion that felt far too close to madness. And from somewhere deeper in the woods, I heard a second set of footsteps. Not hers. Someone else coming closer. I froze where I stood. The echo of those second footsteps seemed to vibrate in the soil, growing louder, steady, intentional. The woman didn't turn around. She didn't even flinch. She just smiled. Don't worry, she whispered. He knows you're home too. My flashlight flickered again, the beam shaking in my trembling hands. Who's here? I demanded. Who did you bring? She tilted her head gently, as if hearing a song only she could understand. I didn't bring him, she said softly. He found me. Just like I found you. The footsteps grew closer. Branches snapped under weight. Twigs cracked like brittle bones. My breathing quickened. Then a voice drifted out from the darkness, a calm, low voice I had never heard before but somehow felt instantly threatened by. Stay where you are, Lawrence. I spun toward the tree's flashlight beam cutting through the dark. A man stepped out, tall, steady, expression unreadable. He wore a forest ranger's coat, but the badge was missing. So were the patches. And the gun holster was empty. Nothing about him looked official. Everything about him looked dangerous. He stopped a few feet from me, hands raised as if approaching a frightened animal. You don't need to be scared, he said. No one's here to hurt you. That was a lie. I felt it in my bones. I backed away toward the cabin, keeping both of them in view. Who are you? I demanded. The woman answered before he could speak. He's the one who helped me stay safe, she whispered. The one who understood what you meant to me. My chest tightened painfully. You two planned this, living in my home, wearing my wife's things, lying to the police. Her eyes widened as if I were the unreasonable one. I didn't lie, she said. I protected us. I protected her memory. And me? I asked, voice cracking. How did you protect me? She stepped forward, hands shaking with emotion. I kept the cabin warm. I kept it clean. I kept everything exactly how she told me you liked it. He looked around the clearing. I waited here because I believed her. She said you couldn't be alone when she was gone. She said someone had to stay close. My heart ached, not because her words were true, but because they were. That wasn't her message, I whispered. She meant family, friends, people I knew, not strangers, not you. The woman's face broke, splintering like glass. You don't understand. Her voice trembled. She and I were connected. She trusted me. She gave me everything I needed. She lifted her arm. The bracelet gleamed. Take it off, I said. Now, her smile vanished. Her knuckles whitened around the metal charm. No, she whispered. Not this, not ever. I stepped forward despite the fear. That belongs to my wife. Her pupils widened with something close to panic. She would want me to have it, she said. She told me. She told you nothing, I snapped. You built fantasies around a dying woman because you were lonely. Her breath hitched, eyes reddening. She was lonely, she whispered, and so were you. The man finally spoke again. That's enough, he said. He's overwhelmed. We should have eased him into this. Eased me into what? I backed up further, nearly tripping. I called the sheriff, I lied. They're 10 minutes away. The man didn't flinch, neither did she, but they did exchange a very small, very telling glance. And I realized they weren't afraid, not of the police, not of consequences, not of anything I could do. The woman approached slowly. We don't want trouble, she said. We just want a life with you, like she wanted. She didn't want this, I said. My wife wanted me to live, not to be trapped in her shadow. The woman's voice cracked. I didn't trap you, I saved you. With wallpaper, I shouted. With pretending you knew her, with stalking me, she shook her head violently. I wasn't stalking you, I was becoming who she needed me to be. No, I said quietly. You were becoming who you needed you to be. Tears streamed down her face. The man stepped closer, his voice low, controlled. This conversation is getting emotional. Let's all go inside. We can sort this out. I stepped back again. No, no one is going inside, but he kept walking. Lawrence, he said softly, don't do anything stupid. We just want you to come home. I tightened my grip on the flashlight, ready to swing if he got too close. And then headlights, blinding, cutting through the trees, roaring up the mountain road. A siren whooped once. Warning, authority, the woman shrieked. No, no, not now. The man grabbed her wrist. Move, he snapped. They turned and bolted into the trees. I staggered forward, breathing hard, watching their silhouettes disappear behind the pines. The sheriff's SUV skidded to a stop in the clearing. Deputy Harris jumped out. Mr. Bishop, are you injured? I shook my head numbly. They were here, I gasped. They lived in my house. They watched me. Where are they? Harris demanded. I pointed into the forest. Running. Both of them, he radioed backup immediately. Within minutes, the woods erupted with officers, flashlights slicing the dark. But I knew even before they said it, they wouldn't find them. People like that don't get caught the same night they lose everything. People like that wait. A week later, I sold the cabin. I packed boxes. I left Montana. And the day before I left, I found one last thing under the porch, a piece of wallpaper, folded neatly, tucked under a rock. On the back, written in small handwriting, "This isn't goodbye. You're still not ready to be alone." My hands shook as I crushed the paper, because she wasn't wrong. But I would rather be alone for the rest of my life than let someone else rewrite my grief. And when I drove away from that cabin for the last time, I whispered the only goodbye that mattered. I'm ready now.